jackets. Today we're going to read a book titled Joseph Had a Little Overcoat by the author Taback. Joseph Had a Little Overcoat is the story of Joseph. Joseph wears his overcoat for a long time and then something happens to it. It gets old and worn. As we read, we'll find out what Joseph does with his overcoat once it gets old and worn. We'll also keep track of the order of this story here on our felt board using some pictures as props. I'm going to put Joseph right here. At the end, we'll take a closer look up at our felt board to remember the order of this story from beginning to end. Let's get started. This is Joseph Had a Little Overcoat by Taback. And there's Joseph right there. Joseph Had a Little Overcoat by Taback. Joseph had a little overcoat. It was old and worn. Notice he's put some patches on it. Notice it's fraying at the end. All right, let's make sure we're keeping track of the story up on our felt board too. Very first thing that happens is that Joseph's overcoat gets old and worn. So I'm going to put his overcoat on him. It's the very first thing that happened. All right, let's see what he does with this old, worn overcoat. So he made a jacket out of it. So because the overcoat got old, worn, needed patches, started fraying, he's made a shorter, smaller jacket, which no longer looks old or worn. All right, so up on our felt board, I'm gonna move the overcoat to the side so we can remember that was first. But now he has on a jacket. So I'll put that on Joseph now. There we go. He made a jacket out of it and went to the fair. Joseph had a little jacket. It got old and worn. So wait a minute, now the jacket's gotten old and worn too, just like the overcoat. It has patches, it's fraying at the bottom. Let's see what he's going to do. So he made a vest out of it. So he's made himself a brand new vest. A vest is smaller than a jacket, doesn't need as much material. He got rid of the old worn sleeves, made it a little shorter. He made a new vest and danced at his nephew's wedding. So he didn't throw away his jacket when it got old and worn. He just made it a little bit smaller into a vest. Even though it's the same material as before, it must feel brand new to him. Joseph had a little vest. It got old and worn. Noticing a pattern here. His clothes keep getting old and worn out. Just like his overcoat and his jacket, now his new vest has some patches, has some fraying down at the bottom. What do you think he'll do next? Let's see. His vest is old and worn, so he made a scarf out of it and sang in the men's chorus. So instead of throwing away his old worn vest, he simply made himself a scarf. A scarf requires even less material than a vest. Joseph had a little scarf. It got old and worn. Noticing a pattern here. Just like the overcoat, the jacket, and the vest. Now the scarf is old and worn too. Here we go. Got to make our felt board match our story. So he made a necktie out of it and went to visit his married sister in the city. So Joseph has not thrown away any of these old, worn clothing items yet. He keeps making them into something new, each time something a little smaller. Here we go. What do you think will happen to his necktie? Joseph had a little necktie. It got old and worn. Let's make it match. Got a new looking necktie, but just like the others, it got old and frayed, maybe torn. What do you think he's gonna do with his necktie? There's not a lot of fabric left. So he made a handkerchief out of it and drank a glass of hot tea with lemon. Noticing that Joseph finds ways to reuse the material each time. A new handkerchief. Here we go. Got his new handkerchief to have with his tea. What do you think will happen to the handkerchief? Joseph had a little handkerchief. It got old and worn. What could he possibly make this handkerchief into? Let's see. Here's his old worn handkerchief. What is he gonna make it into? So he made a button out of it. See, he's sewing it on here. And used it to fasten his suspenders. Button's really small, doesn't require a lot of fabric. I can't imagine what will happen next. Everything keeps getting old and worn, but a button is so small. How would he reuse the fabric from a button? Let's see. Joseph had a little button. One day, he lost it. That's different. I suppose it's easy to lose a button since they're so small. I wonder what Joseph will do next. Now, he had nothing. He doesn't have anything to reuse. So, Joseph made a book about it, which shows you can always make something out of nothing. So he didn't have the button left over to reuse, but he did have some pencil, have some paper, and he made a book out of this experience. So he could remember it and tell all of his friends about it, even though he didn't have any clothing items left. He still made something, a story. And that's the end. All right, now that we've finished reading Joseph Had a Little Overcoat by Taback, let's take a look up at our felt board to remember the order of the story from beginning all the way to the end. I'm going to turn the camera around so you can see a bit better. At the beginning of the story, Joseph had an overcoat. The overcoat got old and worn, so he made a jacket out of it. Then the jacket got old and worn, so he made a vest out of it. What happened next? The vest got old and worn, so he made a scarf out of it. The scarf got old and worn, so he made a necktie out of it. What happened next? The necktie got old and worn, so he made a handkerchief out of it. The handkerchief got old and worn, so he made a button. And what happened next? Remember, at the end of the story, Joseph lost his button. He couldn't find it anywhere, and he was left with nothing. But that didn't stop him from making something out of nothing. He made a story to share with his friends and all of us. And that is the story of Joseph Had a Little Overcoat, written and illustrated by Taback. I really like this story, and I hope that you did too. I hope you enjoyed reading it and retelling it, and I will see you for our next read aloud. Bye, Rocket.